Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister for Parliamentary Affairs is invited to lay a financing agreement of a loan of up to $250 million for the Ghana Financial Stability Project for and on behalf of the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will know whether he is aware that Ghana, as part of its agreement with the IMF, between now and even end of 2025, cannot borrow more than $250 million non-concessionary loan. So if he's laying this, what he needs to clarify is whether maybe this came earlier before part of the creditors agreement the minister reached last week with the IMF. Ghana from now, even for 2025, maximum, Ghana can only borrow non-concessionary up to $250 million. Then $500 million into 2026, and it's elevated into 2027. So if you want to cover the whole envelope of 250 with this instrument, what he needs to clarify is, per his knowledge, whether this is a concessionary or a non-concessionary facility and why he wants to lay it, so that it doesn't crowd out Ghana's borrowing space outside the non-concessionary environment. I thank you.
Yeah, is there something else? I thought it's time for him to respond. Honorable Minority Deputy Whip.
Mr. Speaker, very serious. There's something very serious. Mr. Speaker, we have 4 ministers at the Ministry of Finance. We have the minister responsible for finance, Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, 2 deputy ministers at the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Speaker, what we are seeking for is to invoke Order 97.5. And if I may read, a short explanatory statement shall be made by the person presenting a paper where requested by the House or a member or by a member upon presentation. Mr. Speaker, I'm doing this because when we were doing this ministerial approval and we raised these questions, that when you give all the appointments to parliamentary candidates, when we want them to do business on the floor, we may not get them. Almost all the 4 ministers at the Ministry of Finance are candidates. Mr. Speaker, we are also candidates. We are here to do government business. The one contesting Duabusu, the one contesting Honorable Akando, is a candidate. Honorable Speaker is a candidate. Honorable Abraham is a candidate. Honorable Amiata is a candidate. Why do you give ministerial position or government appointments to parliamentary candidates just to win parliamentary seats? Then when we were looking for them to do the business on the floor, they are nowhere to be found. Mr. Speaker, 4 ministers, not even one. We know the majority, former majority leader and the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs is not by a candidate. That's why he's available. Then you give the chalk to him, he is now your mate. Mr. Speaker, he's not a mate, he's the leader, former leader of this house. He's not here to be laying papers. Mr. Speaker, he's not here to be laying papers. Somebody has been given that responsibility and he must be here to perform it. Mr. Speaker, the capable former majority leader is the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. He's championing the aspect of constitutional reforms and amendments. We know. It cannot be just when he was here, he could lay those papers. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter. Mr. Speaker, it's a serious matter. And if none of them is here to do this business, we cannot reduce Parliament to that level. It is for good reason that ministers are given deputies. It's for good reason that the President has added another Minister of State and the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, if you go to energy 5 minutes, 4 or 5 ministers, finance 4 or 5 ministers, then when you are looking for one to do business here, they will be begging Minister for Parliamentary Affairs to intercede on their behalf. He is not a ministerial intercessor. Ministerial intercessor. Mr. Speaker, The ministers responsible must be here to do this business. However, Mr. Speaker, I still stand by invoking Order 927-5. That is what should be done on that regard.
Yes. Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, may we hear your response?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by my good friend, the member for Tamale South, he raised issues about the remit of this financing agreement, Speaker, and then he drew attention to the matters that have come out without negotiations with the World Bank and IMF. Mr. Speaker, this financing agreement is between the Republic of Ghana and the IDA of the World Bank Group. So they know that we are not infringing any agreement with the group, the World Bank or the IMF. That's number one. Number two, the chief whip for the minority is asking to be assured that we have sufficient copies. Mr. Speaker, our orders provide that after the presentation, sufficient copies should be made available. Mr. Speaker, so it must be late before distribution could be made. It must be late before distribution could be made. Mr. Speaker, then the Deputy Whip is also saying that a short explanatory statement must be made by the person presenting the paper where requested by the House or a member upon the presentation. What's the meaning of upon presentation? It is not before presentation. After presentation has been made. So if presentation has not been made, no question would not be activated. Mr. Speaker, upon is after, not before. Upon presentation is after presentation, not before presentation. Mr. Speaker, the last one is
this is contempt of Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, so I believe these are the three issues that have been raised by my colleagues, and if you may indulge me, I'll do the presentation and then after, because Mr. Speaker, the document is coming before us. If after interrogation we believe that the House should not approve of the agreement, it's left in the House to so decide. We're not there yet. So I would entreat my colleagues that they should exercise restraint. Let's get to the issues after the presentation, and when it comes before us, then we'll do what is appropriate and indeed proper. Mr. Speaker, so with that, I may want to seek your indulgence to do the presentation.
Let me hear from Honourable Bernard Ahiefo.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I always say that when a procedure is prescribed for a right to be exercised, it is a procedure that you have to follow in exercising the right. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the spirit and the letter of Order 97-1, and Mr. Speaker, with your permission, if I may read, whenever sufficient copies of a paper have been received in the office of the clerk for distribution to members, notice of the presentation of that paper may be placed on the other paper, and when the Speaker announces presentation of papers, the person laying the paper shall rise and bow to the chair, and the clerk shall read the title of the paper, and the paper shall be considered to have been laid on the table. Mr. Speaker, the emphasis is whenever sufficient copies have been received. So all that the leadership is asking is that the paper that they are coming to lay, has the sufficient copy been received, so that after laying the paper, it will be for distribution. That is all that the leadership is asking. Mr. Speaker, thank you once again for giving me the opportunity.
Let me listen to the First Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the standing order referred to by Honorable Deputy Whip and my friend Ahiafo very clearly lays out the practices that before a paper is advertised as ready to be laid. Now, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the clerks at table don't have a voice in this chamber. And therefore, it is presumed that they have regularly gone through the process before they advertise the paper to be here. A presumption of regularity is what clearly should underscore the publication of the paper as ready to be laid. Mr. Speaker, I think that we should not, under any circumstances, permit members to bring the conduct of the table office into this. Your table office are presumed to have done the proper and the regular thing before advertising same to be laid. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the chief whip for the minority, it was who came indicating strongly and pointing to Order 97.1. And as the first deputy speaker has read out, indeed, the Honorable Bernard Ahiafo also did the same thing. Clearly, the provision reads that whenever sufficient copies of a paper have been received, whenever sufficient copies have been received, this is a condition precedent. This is a condition precedent that whenever sufficient copies of a paper have been received, the office of the clerk for distribution to members is a condition precedent. Notice of the presentation of that paper may be placed on the other paper. Mr. Speaker, this is the other paper. This is the other paper. Yes. And we have the advertisement on it. Yes. The presumption, Mr. Speaker, is that they have received sufficient copies. As simple as that. As simple as that. Mr. Speaker, the colleagues know that when Parliament is sitting, the clerks at table cannot be invited to join the debate. They are convinced and persuaded that they have sufficient copies. And on account of that, Mr. Speaker, on account of that, they have adequately advertised. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Abuja is saying that that's not the meaning of the 97. Mr. Speaker, that is laughable. You are saying that this is not. The Honorable Bernard Ahiafo was quoting the letter and spirit. What's the letter saying? And what's the spirit saying? The two of them are in tandem. And Mr. Speaker, can I read again? Whenever sufficient copies of a paper have been received in the office of the clerk for distribution to members. Notice of the presentation of that paper may be placed on the other paper. The condition precedent is that they have received copies and need not only mere copies but sufficient copies, and having so assured themselves, Mr. Speaker, they have placed the notice on the presentation on the other paper. That is their simple responsibility, and Mr. Speaker, they have accomplished that. Mr. Speaker, these people, they want to turn this place into a marketplace. They will not even listen to people. Can you please resume your seat? Let me finish. I'm not out of order, so you cannot be abutting me the way you are doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe the chief whip for the minority has fallen on his own sword. Yes. You are falling by your own sword. So, Mr. Speaker, you can't come back. You are falling by your own sword. You are not dead. You say you are coming back. you are dead. You say you are coming back. Mr. Speaker, so respectfully, can we go on? Because we have so much to do today. Thank you very much.
Yes, Chairman, Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the former majority leader that we cannot invite the clerk at table to be part of the debate. That is a fact. But, Mr. Speaker, once the clerk cannot take part of the debate, having assured us that sufficient copies have been received, the clerk can just detail somebody to go and bring the copies into the chamber. Yes. No, we just want to see that the copies are here before we allow the paper to be laid. Mr. Speaker, that will be the solution. Because he cannot come out and say, I have received them, but he can bring copies into the chamber. Let's see as evidence. Yes. Mr. Speaker, that's my suggestion.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, when I made the request, one of the things I asked was whether the Minister for Parliament, responsible for parliamentary affairs, is aware of the reason for the borrowing of the extra $250 million. Indeed, if he has seen a copy of what has been presented to the clerk, which so far he himself hasn't got a copy because what he's holding is how do you call it? The standing order. He's not even holding a copy of what he's supposed to lay. You want him to read, as I said, what is in order 97.3, that a short explanatory statement shall be made. I'm not talking about you. In fact, you made a comment about the provisions of the standing orders. We want you to talk about the content, the short explanation of the content of the IDA loan.
You should read 4 as well.
And then also apply to 4. And just be aware that if you are not able to do that, we will say that you are not allowed to lay the paper. Let me, Mr. Speaker, on a serious note, I believe that this should be laid by the finance minister himself, because this actually goes to the heart of almost every problem we have currently as a country. Over borrowing. When we have borrowed up to our neck, we can't pay. We are going around the world begging everybody to forgive us our loans. At the same time, we are borrowing more. We have gone everywhere. China was last week telling China that forgive us part of what we borrowed. And then on Wednesday morning, you are borrowing more. How do you solve your borrowing problem by borrowing more? I don't get it. And I'm saying that the finance minister better answer that question. Don't take that responsibility, because it's a dangerous trap for you. In fact, once upon a time you presented the budget here. That year was better. The year that the finance minister came, things went bad. But they could have made you a finance minister. They refused not to. They refused to make you a finance minister. Don't take up the responsibility of borrowing extra money to, help the economy. Mr. Speaker, if the finance minister and his 2 deputies plus our colleague, Honorable Abraham, who is a minister of state, can come here tomorrow or this afternoon, they can come and lay this paper. This is not an urgent issue. So, Mr. Speaker, I am still not convinced that the respected, they call him, leader emeritus. He's capable of laying it, but when he lays it, myself and himself are aware that we don't even know what he's laying, because he hasn't seen a copy of what he's laying. He hasn't seen a copy of what he's laying, that is a fact. The clerks cannot speak here. But Mr. Speaker, maybe we should find out whether the clerks can whisper to you whether they have a copy. Because the clerk's office is not far away from here. As for us, when he lays it, we want to be served a copy of that right now, not later. So, Mr. Clerk, you may be shielded in a few minutes that you can't speak on the floor. But if after 30 minutes, members don't get a copy, it would have meant that you have deceived Parliament by placing something on the other paper, maybe through the chief whip, who has also not seen a copy of what he is laying. Yes, you haven't seen a copy. None of you there have seen a copy of whatever you are laying. That is a fact. Mr. Speaker, let's keep this one. That is my view, that let's keep this particular one. He can lay the other one. Let's keep this one, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Order 97.3, and as a bona fide member of the House, Mr. Speaker, I seek your leave to request from the member presenting the paper, Mr. Speaker, to render a short explanatory statement underpinning the paper is presented. Mr. Speaker, the order in question reads, a short explanatory statement shall be made by the person presenting a paper where requested by the House or a member upon the presentation. Mr. Speaker, the dictionary meaning of the word upon is that it is an official meaning of the word on. So, on the presentation of the paper, Mr. Speaker, my prayer is that you should render a short explanatory statement regarding underpinning the paper that is laying. Otherwise, then, Mr. Speaker, I'll proceed to urge you to invoke Order 97.4 so that the paper will be deemed not to have been laid. Mr. Speaker, I so submit. Thank you.
Yes.
Speaker, as a matter of record, since the chief whip for the minority stated unequivocally that I have not seen a copy of the agreement, and he says that is a fact. The Speaker, that indeed cannot be factual. You cannot bear false witness in this house. You cannot. It's sacrilegious. You can't bear false witness in the house. Mr. Speaker, having said so, the other matter is the provision being quoted profusely by the Honorable Dafiano. Mr. Speaker, the language there is succinct and unambiguous. A short explanatory statement shall be made by the person presenting a paper where requested by the House or a member upon the presentation. Mr. Speaker, when the presentation has been done, then this will kick in. Now, you have mounted a barrier that we will not allow the paper to be presented. How do you activate what you are saying? Mr. Speaker, you can't do this in anticipation of what the person is, is requested to do. But Mr. Speaker, I noticed that this is holding us back. There's so much work to be done. So, with the greatest respect, and they are talking in particular about the E Roman number 2. If we can stand up. If we can stand that one down and move to others, because first of all, as I keep saying, it cannot be that a member or a chairman of a committee or a minister, deputy minister, whoever wants to present a paper to the House, especially a minister presenting a paper on behalf of the government, and Parliament will say that we will not allow you to do the presentation. It cannot be done. It does not exist in any Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not there. I'm just saying that, just so that the House will not be held down, I would want to plead that I want to pray with you that we stand the E Roman number 2 down and do the others. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Honorable members, because we turn it into a debate, I had a difficulty in participating because the rules don't permit me to participate in the debate. But the procedure clearly laid out by our rules and practice is for the Speaker to admit business. I have to admit the business before they come on the order paper. And before I admit the business, I have to satisfy myself that there are sufficient copies available so that after it's presented to the House, the papers could be distributed to members. In this particular instance, I did assure myself that there were sufficient copies available at the office of the clerk. Because when you read 97, it's talking about at the office of the clerk. When you have sufficient papers available at the office of the clerk. And I assured myself that there were sufficient papers before they were admitted. And when you admit the paper from 95, we are told, 96, we are told how the paper should be presented. And so that has been followed. It's after it's presented that the rest follow. A member may request that a short brief be given to the House as to the nature or substance of the paper that has been presented. That is there. But until it's laid, the others don't arise. And so I want to permit the minister to lay the paper. If so requested by any member, then we follow through the contents of the paper. But now we are doing the procedure. And so I think so far the House hasn't erred. We are quite in order. And I'll allow the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs to present the paper to the House. Now the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs is not at his seat. Yes, Majority Chief Whip, the Minister is not at his seat.
Speaker, I can assure the House that I will produce the Minister when it's time for him to lay the paper. But
well, it's time. I've given him the opportunity.
In the meantime, you want to rather proceed to other people.
In the meantime, the Minister is here. The Minister is here. He is here. So he should lay the.
My colleague.
The Minister is here.